The iron collar closes around her throat with a sound that will echo through the rest of her life. A metallic click that ends everything she was and begins everything she will become. You can smell the smoke from the burning fortress behind her. Taste the copper blood in your mouth where a Roman fist found its mark. But this is not your story to live. It belongs to Iona of the Arverni. 24 years old, kneeling in October mud outside the ruins of Alesia, watching her world collapse into ash and chains. Before we descend into what comes next, I need to know, where are you watching this from? It's extraordinary to me that a woman suffering from over 2,000 years ago can reach across continents and centuries to find you right now, wherever you are in the world. 3 hours ago, Iona was a queen. The wife of Vercingetorix himself, the war chief who united Gaul's fractious tribes. The king who made Julius Caesar's legions bleed for every mile of ground. For 6 weeks, Alesia's walls had held against Rome's siege engines and starvation tactics while all of Gaul held its breath and prayed. Now those walls are breached, the fortress is burning, and Iona kneels among 47 other noblewomen in a processing line that stretches across the battlefield like a slave market materializing from smoke. A Roman officer walks the line with a wax tablet and stylus, cataloging them, not as prisoners, as merchandise. He pauses before Iona, studies her face with the clinical detachment of a merchant evaluating livestock, and makes a notation. This one, he says in Latin to the soldier beside him, the king's wife. Mark her as reserved imperial property. Caesar will want her for the triumph. The words mean nothing to Iona yet. She doesn't speak Latin. She doesn't understand that triumph is not a celebration of victory, but a specific Roman ceremony, a parade of humiliation that will consume the next 6 years of her life. She doesn't know that imperial property means her body no longer belongs to her in any sense that matters. What she does understand is the look in the officer's eyes, the same look Roman soldiers gave the grain stores and gold they looted from Alesia's treasury. She has become a thing to be inventoried. This is September 52 BCE. Julius Caesar has just secured the victory that will make him Rome's most celebrated general. That will fund his march to dictatorship. That will earn him a month on every calendar printed for the next 2 millennia. We know Caesar as military genius, political mastermind, the man whose crossing of the Rubicon changed history. We know his affair with Cleopatra, his assassination on the Ides of March, his famous last words. What we don't know, what has been systematically sanitized from history books for over 2,000 years, is what his system did to women like Iona. Caesar's own writings record that his 8-year conquest of Gaul killed approximately 1 million people and enslaved another million. 1 million human beings converted to property. And among that million were hundreds of thousands of women wives of defeated warriors. Daughters of chieftains, mothers pulled from burning homes. They became what Rome called spoils of war, processed through a system so efficient, so thoroughly designed, that its administrative precision is what should terrify us most. Because this wasn't chaos. This was policy. Within hours of Alesia's fall, the Romans established what they call a sortitio, a sorting area. Military physicians and slave traders who travel with Caesar's legions set up wooden stakes in a trampled field below the fortress walls. String ropes between them to create holding pens. The captured women are brought in groups of 10 or 20, made to wait their turn for what comes next. Iona is separated from the common captives because her status has already been noted. She's taken to a tent erected for high-value processing, the term preserved in Roman administrative records that historians have spent decades analyzing, trying to understand the bureaucratic machinery of institutionalized horror. Inside the tent waits a physician named Gaius Oppius, whose name survives in Caesar's campaign logs. He's accompanied by a scribe and 2 soldiers. "Stand," Oppius orders in broken Gaulish. "Remove your garments." Iona doesn't move. One soldier steps forward and tears the remnants of her ceremonial robe fiend wool, dyed with expensive woad, from her body. The cloth falls into October mud. She stands naked before strangers, while autumn wind raises goose flesh on her skin. What follows is called an inspectio an inspection. Appius circles her slowly, dictating observations to his scribe. Approximately 24 years. Good physical condition despite recent siege deprivation. Clear skin, healthy hair, no visible disease. Teeth intact, these tribal women have better dental health than our own citizens. Interestingly, muscle tone suggests active lifestyle. He steps closer, begins the physical examination that Roman slave processing requires. No obvious injuries, no evidence of previous births. Potentially fertile, though we cannot confirm without extended observation. Modern psychologists who study historical trauma have a term for what this process induces: identity dissolution. The systematic breaking down of a person's sense of self under conditions of total powerlessness. The inspection takes approximately 20 minutes per woman, 20 minutes, during which a human being is evaluated like livestock, touched and assessed and reduced to a list of marketable attributes. Appius finishes and gestures for the soldiers to take Iona away, but first he walks her to the tent's entrance. "Look," he says, pointing toward the main processing area. The king's wife should understand what happens to those who cause problems. Iona looks. Rows of naked women standing in the cold. Inspectors moving between them with the efficiency of merchants at a cattle auction. A woman who resists being dragged aside and beaten until she stops moving, then examined while unconscious. Another woman who collapses from exhaustion being unchained and left in the mud. She has no market value if she's too weak to survive transport. And beyond the inspection area, the chains. Long iron chains with collars attached at intervals, designed to link captives together for the march to Rome. Hundreds of women are already being fastened to these chains, connected at the neck to the woman in front and behind, their individual identities disappearing into an endless line of human cargo. Among them is Brigantia of the Aderbates, 22 years old and 6 months pregnant. Her husband, Commius, had been one of Vercingetorix's chief lieutenants, which makes her valuable, but her pregnancy makes her complicated. Roman protocols for pregnant captives are specific and coldly practical. Hold them until delivery, then separate mother and child. The infant becomes inventory, sold separately, or raised as a slave if it survives. The mother enters standard processing once she's no longer pregnant. Brigantia is placed in a separate section of what the Romans call reserved transport, close enough to Iona that they can occasionally speak, far enough that guards can manage them separately. She won't be subjected to what other captive women experience during the march to Rome. Pregnant women have reduced market value. Damaging the pregnancy would reduce it further. But being spared one horror doesn't mean being spared all horrors. The march begins 3 days after Alesia falls. Caesar's legions move at approximately 20 miles per day standard Roman. Military pace, and the captive trains move with them. Thousands of enslaved people chained together in lines stretching for miles, guarded by soldiers whose primary responsibility is preventing escape. Modern historians estimate between 10 and 30% of captives died during these marches. Exposure, exhaustion, disease, despair. Women who couldn't maintain pace were unchained and left behind. Women who became too sick to be valuable were sometimes killed rather than slowed the column. Women who tried to escape were executed publicly, their bodies left alongside the road as warnings. But death wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Each evening, Caesar's army establishes temporary fortifications that house tens of thousands of soldiers and their human cargo. These camps follow standardized designs, the same layout reproduced night after night, creating mobile cities with specific zones for specific functions. And each night, the processing continues. Women are categorized during their initial inspection. Category 1. Women of exceptional beauty or noble status, reserved for commanders, potential gifts to political allies, or attractions for the Roman triumph ceremony. Category 2. Young, healthy women suitable for domestic service, to be sold to wealthy households. Category 3. Women designated for what Roman records call camp service, a euphemism meaning they'll be made available to soldiers during the journey. Approximately 80% of captured women fall into Category 3 or are deemed too marginal to transport all the way to Rome. Only 20% receive any protection during the march. Aeona is Category 1, marked as imperial property, reserved for Caesar's triumph. But reserved doesn't mean untouched. It means a hierarchy of access. The centurion in charge of high-value transport is named Lucius Vorenus, a veteran whose name appears in multiple administrative records from this campaign. On the third night of the march, he explains the rules to the noble women under his watch. Caesar said to keep you presentable. He didn't say to keep you untouched. There's a difference. You have a choice: make this journey easier or harder. Arrive in Rome able to walk with dignity in the triumph, or arrive broken and be sold to a brothel. The outcome depends entirely on how much trouble you cause me. This is the choice the system offers: compliance in exchange for preservation of some fragment of dignity, resistance in exchange for destruction. Modern trauma specialists call this deliberate trauma architecture, creating conditions where victims must participate in their own degradation to avoid even worse outcomes. It's designed not just to break bodies, but to break spirits, to make women complicit in what's done to them, to destroy the possibility of maintaining integrity under total powerlessness. Approximately 60% of noble women in high-value transport cooperate with their guards during the march. 25% resist initially, but eventually comply. 15% resist throughout and are transferred to general chains or die during the journey. Aeona is among the 60%. She tells herself it's survival, that enduring this isn't the same as accepting it, that compliance isn't consent, that her spirit remains her own even when her body doesn't. These are the lies that make survival possible. Somewhere in northern Italy, 2 months into the march, Brigantia goes into labor. The delivery happens in a military camp attended by a Roman midwife whose primary concern is the survival of both products: the mother who can be sold and the infant who represents additional inventory. Brigantia labors for 18 hours in a tent surrounded by strangers who don't speak her language. Far from home, far from the women who should have attended her, far from everything childbirth was supposed to mean. The infant is a boy. He's healthy. He's taken from Brigantia within hours of delivery. Where are you taking him? She screams as soldiers carry the wrapped bundle away. Where is my son? No one answers. The infant is recorded in administrative logs as male, healthy, born in camp, mother, Gaulish noble. He's assigned a value based on standard pricing for infant slaves. He's transported separately from his mother for the remainder of the journey. Brigantia never learns what happens to him. Never learns whether he's sold, whether he survives, whether he grows up somewhere in the empire with no knowledge of who he was or where he came from. She lives another 14 years as a household slave in Rome, never stops asking about her son, never receives an answer. She dies at 36, still not knowing whether her child lived or died. The march takes 4 months. In September 46 BC, 6 years after Alicia falls, Julius Caesar finally celebrates his Gallic triumph. 6 years. Vercingetorix has been held prisoner that entire time, confined in a cell beneath the Roman Forum, kept alive specifically so he can be displayed in the triumph before being executed. Aeona has been held as well, in a facility outside Rome where high-value captives are stored until needed. She's been maintained in reasonable condition, fed adequately, allowed to bathe, permitted limited exercise. She's property being stored for future use, preserved like any valuable commodity. But storage isn't safety. The guards interpret their duties as Centurion Vorenus once did: 6 years of authority, 6 years of waiting. On the day of the triumph, Aeona is 30. She has spent 6 years captive, unsure what Rome will do with her. Now she walks through the city in chains, following her husband to his execution. At dawn, Rome's street spur have 700,000 strong line the parade route. Senators led, wagons carry spoils, and then come the captives. Gaulish warriors march thin, humiliated. Noble women, dressed and styled for display, walk separately. Among them is Aeona, wife of Vercingetorix, Caesar's ultimate proof of conquest. The crowd jeers, throws stones and vegetables. She walks with eyes forward, coached to show dignity. Look like a queen, even in chains. At the forum, she sees Vercingetorix brought forward, kneeling before Caesar. The rope tightens. He struggles, then goes still. The man who united Gaul is a corpse for Rome's entertainment. The parade continues. She walks outwardly unbroken, yet inside, something shatters. Afterward, she is taken to the Forum Boarium, displayed on a platform as Gaulish, noble, widow of Vercingetorix. Age 30, undamaged. Undamaged, no wounds, no disease, no acknowledgement of 6 years' torment, of her husband's death, of the soul broken by captivity. A lie standard in the market. Aeona is sold to Marcus Junius Silenus, a senator who collects exotic slaves. You'll be treated well, he tells her. Perform when I have guests. Tell your story. Be an ornament, and your life will be comfortable. And if I refuse, she asks. You won't. Disobedient slaves go to crueler masters, he says. She complies, attending parties, recounting her loss, displaying grief for Roman amusement. Over 11 years, she learns Latin, Roman customs, and the household social hierarchies. Escape is impossible. Gaul is occupied, her family gone. She waits, though she doesn't know for what. One evening, at a party, the guest of honor is Mark Antony, Caesar's lieutenant. The king's widow, he says. You were magnificent, even in defeat. Do you still have that fire? Rome has taken everything, she replies. Antony laughs. Perhaps you've become more Roman than you know. I want her. By evening's end, Aeona belongs to Antony. The next morning, he tells her, you knew Vercingetorix. You understand the Gaulish mind. Caesar will need intelligence for new campaigns. You'll provide it. I know nothing of Parthia or Germania, she says. No, but you know the psychology of the conquered. That knowledge has value. Aeona sees the opportunity a role beyond display, but understands the moral cost, aiding the empire that destroyed her people. What guarantees do I have? She asks. None, Antony says. Slaves don't receive guarantees, but serve me well, and your circumstances will improve. That's the best I can offer. It's probably the best offer she ever received. She accepts. The years that follow are strange. Aeona becomes something unprecedented, a Gaulish woman advising Roman military strategy. She attends meetings where campaigns are planned, where intelligence is evaluated, where decisions determining the fates of nations are made. She provides insights into tribal psychology, patterns of resistance and submission, ways conquered peoples can be managed most efficiently. She's collaborating with the system that destroyed her, helping the empire expand, contributing to the enslavement of other peoples, and she's surviving. When Caesar is assassinated in 44 BCE, Aeona watches the aftermath from within Antony's household, the chaos, conspiracy, civil wars that follow. She watches Rome tear itself apart over questions of power and succession. She feels nothing. That absence of feeling is its own form of damage. She should feel satisfaction watching her conquerors murder each other. Should feel hope, thinking Rome's weakness might mean freedom for enslaved peoples. Instead, she feels empty. The capacity for strong emotion has been burned out of her during processing at Alesia, during the march, during 6 years of storage, during the triumph, during 11 years as Silenus's ornament, during the years advising Antony on how to conquer others. She survived. But the woman who once fought 6 soldiers in Alesia's ruins no longer exists. In 40 BCE, 4 years after Caesar's death, Antony frees her as he departs for Egypt. You have a choice, he tells her. Stay with protected status or take your freedom. Freedom means uncertainty, survival without support, without the structure that defined her for 2 decades. It means asking what she is, if not someone's property. I'll take my freedom, she says. Aona lives another 34 years, never returning to Gaul. The land she knew is gone. Roman provinces, Latin language, Roman gods replacing her culture. In Rome, she works as a translator and advisor, helping merchants, officials, and families communicate with Gaulish slaves. She serves the system still. She survives. She never marries. Romans see her as a barbarian, Gauls as a collaborator. She belongs fully to neither world. She remembers the women from Elisa Bergantia, who died searching for her child, and thousands whose names she never knew. She is the only one, as far as she knows, who survived with some fragment of self intact. Aona dies in 06 BCE, 78 years old, in a small Aventine apartment. Her final words, in Gaulish, are simple. I remember. I remember all of it. The history books ignore her. Caesar's commentaries list numbers, slaves, prophets, victories. The triumph is Rome's glory. But Aona existed. Brigantia existed. Thousands of women processed through Caesar's system existed. Their suffering was policy, not accident. This is what victory looked like for the defeated. This is what conquest meant for women who never chose to fight. And someone had to remember.